This is an island surrounded by water, big water, ocean water. Trust me, I'm like a smart person. I'm very consistent. I'm a very stable genius. I had the best words. Tolerated. I know words. Mike Pounds. I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges of the investigation. But there's no better word than stupid. Anonymous, really anonymous. I'm very highly educated. One of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water. Had the best words. God bless the United States.
Round the nation, TYZ Nation, Jeff Waldorf here with you. Welcome to the show. It's Monday, new week, new disasters. Let's get to it. Before we dive into the show, I want to remind you, please like and share the stream. Please participate with the super chats. In order to help the show, of course, we need your help more than ever. We're currently doing a Patreon drive to try to get me to 400 patrons and then beyond. But for now, keeping expectations and goals low, because that's how I operate. I always keep expectations low. We're at 372 patrons. Can we see 375 by the next break? It's a couple stories in. We'll see what happens. But again, this is for the health and long-term viability of the show. We will not survive unless we have a strong base of membership. And so, like I said, we need your help. We don't get funded by corporations. We don't get paid despite the fact that we are in the envelope or the umbrella of the Young Turks Network, we don't get paid by the Young Turks. It's actually kind of the opposite. We pay to be part of the network. And so if we could get your help in making the show sustainable, then that would be amazing. It would help our show continue to survive and thrive long after coronavirus is over. So please help. All right. Anyway, so let's dive into the stories. Before, actually, you know what? We have some breaking news, actually. And so let's get into it. All right. So we have some breaking news. It appears that the oil market has completely crashed. And I mean literally crashed. Oil is selling for, well, it's not even selling anymore. Producers are literally giving away oil. I'm not kidding. So this is according to Business Insider. U.S. oil prices plummeted in historic fashion on Monday, hitting their lowest level on record as traders unloaded positions ahead of the May contract's Tuesday expiration. So West Texas Intermediate crude for oil futures for May delivery cratered by as much as 108% to a total of negative $1.43 a barrel. Do you understand that? Like, that's negative. Holy crap. Now, the selling had WTI on track to close at its lowest levels since record-keeping began in March 1983. According to Dow Jones market data, the June contract was trading lower by 12.5% at $21 $1.99 a barrel. But we're not there anymore. We're not there. Gone. Gone. Now, according to Phil Flynn, senior market analyst at Price Futures, told Fox Business, quote, "The May contract is a horror show, heading into the worst delivery situation in history." And he notes that with demand still dead and OPEC plus cuts not hitting fast enough, the market looks like it has no bottom. There is no bottom to this barrel. It's gone. Oil futures, gone. What is going on here? All right. So a lot of this, of course, has to do with the negotiations, of course, between Russia and Saudi Arabia when it comes to oil. OPEC, again, not cutting production. So we've got actually a veritable surplus of incredibly cheap oil. And we've got strategic reserves here in America and other countries getting filled up with all of that cheap oil. And so here you go. We have an oil crash. Gone. Now, a lot of that also has to do with demand. There's actually a lot less demand because nobody's out there traveling. And so we're not traveling. Coronavirus has people staying at home, obviously. And so there's just no need. And so cratered, gone. In fact, demand for crude is projected to fall by 29 million barrels per day this month. According to the International Energy Administration, as COVID-19 has forced countries around the world to issue stay-at-home orders to slow the spread of the disease. Lower economic activity, of course, means weaker demand for crude oil and its byproducts, including gasoline and jet fuel. Of course, almost nobody's traveling by jet either. So, I mean, that's huge. Now, I mentioned the Strategic Oil Reserve. So let me go to that. They have some information here as well about the storage tanks in Cushing, Oklahoma. That is a key U.S. oil hub that is filling up at an astounding rate. Inventories have ballooned by 48% to about 55 million barrels. Capacity at the hub is about 76 million barrels, according to the EIA. So we are filling that up immediately. And so now, of course, people are worried about this. You've got investors that are freaking out, obviously. And so I haven't seen anybody jumping out of windows yet, but it might be coming soon. So wouldn't this be a great time with oil cratering, essentially, because there's little demand for it at this point? Maybe we should start, I don't know, pushing more solar. Just because might be a good thing. That's just my humble opinion, because, look, I'm trying to figure out what exactly I need to say here to make a good, compelling argument with oil so cheap. Because here's the thing, right? So you have oil that's cheap, people are going to double down on oil. Well, obviously, it's super, super cheap. So we should just be able to go to, continue with our business as usual when stuff picks up. But wait a minute, we have an opportunity here to start really doing investment in solar. And so that's the direction that I want to go here, is since we no longer have a need right now for the oil markets, why not just get rid of them? Just get rid of it. Oil's not worth anything anyway, right this moment. I'm sure it will rebound here soon. But while we have the opportunity, why not just double down on alternative energy like, again, solar power? Why not take the opportunity that COVID-19 has presented and actually create a better world? I mean, that's my argument for that. You want to, excuse me. So you want to actually come out of this doing better for the world, then that's the obvious direction you want to go. Now, if you want to continue to double down on the old, that what kind of got us here, the older policies that favor big corporations, well, then you're going to go with helping the oil companies and things like that. I'm not in favor. I'm not in favor of that. I'm not in favor of the corporate socialism of giving oil companies more money. Because imagine, right now, the White House is probably in a panic. And what are they going to want to do? They're going to want to bail out oil companies, because of course they would. Oh my God! Look at what are the poor oil corporations oh my God, we must help them. Like literally, Charles Koch is probably having a heart attack right now. Oh my God, oil, the price of oil gone. It was down before this. And I think we should strike while the iron is hot and actually go and do something on solar and actually do more solar and more wind and more stuff that actually does help the planet. Because when we come out of this, and we eventually will, that demand's going to pick right back up for energy. And I would rather us have renewable, clean energy to go back to than just go back to the status quo, which was, of course, more pollution, more oil, and more record profits for oil companies. So, all right. So that's that for the oil thing. Let's move on. We got ridiculous protests, and it's fun. But first, Louie Gohmert. Okay. My button's all mixed up today. Not sure what's going on here. Our German viewer's going to love this. German officials are apparently having a laugh at America's dumbest congressman after he floated a supposed miracle cure that's purported to exist in Germany and Germany alone. Now, there's a fact check piece published in the Houston Chronicle by Madeleine Meckelberg. And now she works for PolitiFact. And so the reason that they had to do this fact check article is because, once again, an American official, this time Louie Gohmert, decided to say a whole lot of stupid, ignorant things and forcing her to, of course, have to fact check it. So let's go to that, right? So now Gohmert claimed that Germany has a miracle treatment for COVID-19 that he claimed was being used to protect healthcare workers in Germany. So here's a quote here that he told a local Texas news station earlier this month. Again, that's this month. That's earlier in April. Quote, "It is being used in Germany as a mist. Healthcare workers go through a misting tent and then going into the hospital, and it kills the coronavirus completely dead. Not only right then, but anytime in the next 14 days the virus touches anything that's been sprayed, it is killed. Dead. Dead." Well, now, here's the thing. Why would you not start putting patients in that tent room, you dunce? You idiot of it, you moron of morons. Don't you think that if that were true, Germany would be like, hey, guess who found a cure? We did. We're awesome. And by the way, here to our wonderful neighbors in the EU and all across the world, here, this is how you do it. Enjoy. Let's get rid of coronavirus. The reason that they didn't do it is because they don't have it. It's literal fake news. And by the way, Meckelberg basically rates that as pants on fire. Yeah. So now we have some more quotes here from German officials. Dr. Jorn Wegner, head of the German Hospital Association, tells Meckelberg that literally nothing about what Gohmert said is true. Quote, "What your congressman said is absolute nonsense. There are no such tents, and there's no powder or magical cure." May I remind you, this is a United States senator who's pushing out this bull crap, right? This absolute garbage. Completely not true. He used to be a judge. Can you imagine being judged by this guy or even having this idiot as your representative? Again, America's dumbest congressman. And yet, there are people that look at him and go, I'm voting for that guy. He's my guy. It's so, oh my God. All right, more. Thomas Rutkowski, a spokesman for the German Society of Hospital Hygiene, he decided to go a little bit further and literally laughed out loud when he was told about Gohmert's claim. I'm sorry, but we did not hear about that magic powder, he wrote in an email to Mecklenburg. Thank you for your mail. Finally, something to laugh at. They're laughing at us, man. They're laughing at it. The world is laughing at us thanks to people like Louie Gohmert. I mean, do you remember, by the way, when Trump and Republicans, these same Republicans putting out fake news, right, would say, oh my God, I can't believe the world's laughing at us under Obama. I can't believe the world is laughing at us. We have stupid leadership. Literally the dumbest leadership. We have the dumbest leadership. Again, we've got Louie Gohmert's been there for a while, right? And he's dumb. Now, the thing is that we don't hear as much about Louie Gohmert's style of idiocy because we have Donald Trump that sucks up the oxygen in the room because he's been proven to be even dumber. But remember, this is the guy who said we can't send gay people to space because how would we procreate? Oh, and other such moments. Like you even have people like Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz now, like he said some pretty ridiculous things, floated some ridiculous conspiracy theories that, for example, Obama was trying to invade Texas with Jade Helm. All this stuff, living in Hobbit homes. Like, oh, Agenda 21 is going to make us live in Hobbit homes. Ridiculous stuff. Garbage. These guys are total idiots. Total idiots. And so, yeah, it's no wonder that the world is laughing at us while also trying to step back a few feet. Like, hey, America, don't get too close. It may not be the stupid that's infectious, but it is the COVID-19, and you guys are swimming in it, both your ignorance and the virus. So, yeah, we're not at all interested in that. Now, Germany and some of the other EU countries are starting to relax their social distancing requirements, right? Their guidelines. And it's because a lot of them have enacted measures that have decreased the amount of new infections. In America, we've done the opposite. We've just done the opposite. In fact, we're now facing protests because they think we've been too harsh, right? And by they, I mean conservatives. Small groups of conservatives who ironically like people like Louie Gohmert and Donald Trump, right? And there's also been business owners, right? And these are the people that you see protesting the most, right? They're mad because they can't send their employer or employees back to work doing lawn care services and things like that. So they're so mad, right? They're so mad. But look, there are people too who are out of work and they're afraid for their financial future. These are the people that I actually do understand and empathize with. They're out of work. They're afraid. The government really isn't helping all that much. And so you have those people. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the people who are saying like social distancing, communism, the anti-freedom. You know what? I have the freedom to go out and get a haircut right now because that's what I need the most. No. Shut up and sit down, Karen. You don't need a freaking haircut right now. All right. What you need to do is to actually care about your community, to give a damn about the people around you and not spread this virus further. And unfortunately, most of these protests are made up of the Karens, right? And are funded by people like Betsy DeVos and Charles Koch. They do not care about people, right? They don't care that people will die as long as it makes them an extra buck. That is not stupid. That's evil, right? So there's a difference here. There's stupid and there's evil. And the people that are funding these, definitely evil. But Gohmert's clearly talking out his ass. But in doing so is spreading dangerous fake news. Unfortunately, like many on the right who are claiming that, for example, Jim Baker, claiming that colloidal silver is a miracle cure, that it kills coronavirus, right? It doesn't work at all. There's no evidence that it works. You also have the president saying, hydroxychloroquine, you should try it. You like it. I guess unless you have heart problems, but you should try it. It's ridiculous, right? Because right now, there's no medical evidence that says hydroxychloroquine is actually an effective treatment for coronavirus. So, not only that, you even have more extreme beliefs, if you can believe it or not. There are conspiracy theories about 5G towers that are spreading coronavirus. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And if you believe any of those things, you have been duped. And look, it'd be fine. I guess it'd be fine if the virus affected only those people. Now, look, as a bleeding heart lib, I would feel bad for them and be like, oh, don't do that. Come on. I actually care about your lives. I know it's crazy, but I care about your life. But this virus is super, super contagious. And so you're endangering other people and yourself. You don't live in this country alone. And for once in your life, would you please think about someone other than yourself and stay home and stop spreading this dangerous, ridiculous nonsense? All right. Moving on here. We got more. There is video making the rounds of a group of MAGA supporters yelling at a couple of hospital workers who are doing a counter protest. Go to China if you want communism. What? What? Okay. Look, I'm beginning to understand that communism might be a catch-all for things that people either both don't like or don't understand. Case in point, right? Why is it that everything they don't like is somehow communism? Don't quite get it. Okay. Now, why are people so not only so stupid, but selfish, right? Yes, I said it. This lady, she is absolutely selfish. And yes, so are a lot of the protesters. Now, you want to get mad at me, you want to cry and call me names. All right, that's fine. I don't care. But you are being selfish. That's the fact. See, here's the thing. Nobody likes this quarantine. I want this quarantine to be over. I want people to be able to go back to work, and I want people to go and make money. I'm being economically affected as well. And I want the economy to do better. See, now, right-wingers, they're all projecting. They're like, I can't believe you want the economy to fail. No, I don't want the economy to fail. I'm affected by the economy. I'm part of the economy. No, of course I don't want it to fail. But I actually want the administration to do things that are smart, that are informed by science and fact. That's what I want. But see, we're not going to be able to do that. We're not going to be able to go back to doing the things that we want to do. And yes, that involves Karen getting a freaking haircut. We're not going to be able to do that if we're not willing to put in the time and effort to stop the virus from spreading rapidly and overwhelming our healthcare system. That's the whole point of social distancing. But no, these Chads and these Karens complain about not getting a haircut when there are people literally choking on their own fluids in hospitals right now with a tube stuck in their throat. Many of them will probably die, and if they recover, the odds are good that they will suffer permanent damage to their lungs and other organs as a result of this virus. That is what we're dealing with. Is that worth a haircut? Is it? Is it? Now, that said, I'm not going to paint all the protesters as the same, right? Even though there are a lot that are just completely uninformed and the only thing they're protesting against is being inconvenienced, right? But there are some people, some actual working class, regular people who are negatively affected by this. And a lot of people are, right? And those are the ones that are worried about not being able to feed their families. I understand those people. I'm not talking about those people. So let me just be 100% clear that I'm not talking. If you were worried about like, hey, man, look, I can't work. The unemployment system is a mess. We're getting a $1,200 check. That's not going to cover my bills. dude, I get it. You are not the people that I am talking about. The government has been doing a terrible job. Broken unemployment systems, that one $1,200 check that could be seized by your bank. And then you've got rents and mortgages that have not been canceled. They are still due. So all of this is pretty messed up, right? So I get that a lot of you are pissed. I'm pissed as well, because the government is forcing us to stay home on the one hand and not work in the many jobs that you can't telework in. And if you are, of course, teleworking and you're able to telework, that's great, right? And maybe we should have a conversation about allowing people to telework at those jobs that they said, oh, no, you need to come in. You need to come in. Well, if you can telework now, you could always telework, right? But the ones who can't, those are mainly working class jobs. And so these governments are saying, you need to stay at home. And by the way, we're really not going to help you all that much. So good luck. If you're mad about that, I completely understand. I totally understand. And the administration, as a result of this, needs to step in a big way. Absolutely big way. Now, they're not planning to do so for the same reason, of course, that these protests are happening. Because you have rich people. Rich people are astroturfing the entire thing, this entire movement, right? And these protests, for example, by these Karens that all they're worried about is getting a haircut and going golfing, which, by the way, I like golfing. I want to go golfing, but guess what? I can't, because I'm a responsible adult and actually care about the other members of my community. That's why I'm not going out and doing these things. But these protests have been funded by people like Betsy DeVos and Charles Koch. And these protests have also been egged on by Donald Trump, by the president, who on the one hand released very sensible guidelines for the states, basically allowing the states to set their own timetables based on actually three criteria that are, based on solid scientific evidence, right? So his administration releases those guidelines, which makes sense. And yet, on the other side, on Twitter, you say, liberate Michigan. Let's liberate Pennsylvania. Liberate Virginia. The Second Amendment is under attack. No, they're not. No, it's not. More people are buying guns than were before. Gun sales are up, man. And by the way, speaking of the guns, it makes me think of the preppers, right? I thought you preppers were prepared, for staying down in your bunkers for the next 10 years, right? I thought you were prepared for that, and now you're getting all butthurt that you can't get a haircut. Come on. But no, Donald Trump is egging this on, and what we need to do is have these people that are in power, right, that could actually do something. They should be able to go and help these families, and they're choosing not to. You know what the squad says? The squad, they actually want to do something about this. They say we should give every American $2,000 a month, at least, right? $1,000 for a kid. And we should do that until the next at least year, or until the economy gets back to pre-coronavirus levels. We should also have a temporary moratorium on rents and mortgages. That would actually help. And how they would do it, of course, is they would mint 2 $1 trillion coins by the Treasury. They can do that. Now, there's no reason not to, especially when the Federal Reserve has given over $6 trillion to the banks so far. Yeah. So they're sending that money to the banks, but they can't send any money to the rest of us. Ridiculous. Look, the United States, I know the Republican position is, the United States budget works like a household budget. No, it does not. It certainly does not. A household can't create money out of thin air. I know, because we would have done it already. A lot of people would. But that would actually help, and the people in power could do it because they actually don't want to. They don't actually care. They would rather sacrifice you and your family in order to help their corporate donors. No, what we need to do is we need to continue practicing social distancing, and thankfully, most Americans agree. These protesters are a very, very small fringe minority of the American people. In fact, In a recent Politico Morning Consult poll released last Wednesday, 81% of Americans say that America should continue social distancing for as long as needed in order to curb the spread of coronavirus. That's even if it means continued damage to the economy. 81% of Americans say they have not left their home for a prolonged period of time, according to another survey. And 86% of respondents to a Democracy Fund UCLA Nationscape USA Today survey said they stopped visiting family and friends because they were worried. So you have massive majorities of people saying social distancing, let's do it. Let's beat the virus. Let's stay home. Let's avoid infecting family and friends. Let's do the right thing. Let's do the right thing, even if it does cause harm. The rest of these people, the rest of the citizens are like, I want a haircut. I got to go golfing. Screw it. I'm going to infect everybody. And by next week or the week after, they could be infecting our frontline healthcare workers in the hospitals as they're gagging for breath. So really. But look, most people are being smart and proactive. And most importantly, they do care enough about their communities to help stop the spread of the virus. The loud minority that is protesting and putting the rest of us in danger, well, they're doing it for reasons that are mostly selfish. And they're going to be the ones that, again, are going to find themselves part of a new wave of coronavirus patients. For example, we saw that in Kentucky. Now, that state just announced 273 new coronavirus cases. Now, in Kentucky, that is the highest single day rise to date for the state. And in fact, according to Newsweek, Kentucky's increase in infected individuals comes after protesters took to the streets throughout the week to call for the state to be reopened. Now, Kentucky has 2,960 cases of the virus, 1,100 recoveries, and a total of 128 deaths, which is now sure to increase thanks to those people not staying home. And in every place that we've seen a protest, about 5 states in total that have so far held protests, Michigan being one of them, we're now probably a week away from seeing a gigantic spike in coronavirus cases, thanks to people not being smart enough to stay home, which means because of this, people will have to stay home longer. This is the cost of ignorance, arrogance, and privilege. All right. One more here before we head to a break. I'm going to roll with this. While there were protests of varying size happening all over the country, a planned protest in Maryland turned out to be a complete bust. According to reports, only about 3 people showed up to an event that was scheduled to start early this morning. Now, this is Brad Bell, the Maryland bureau chief for ABC News 7, and he had reported on Monday morning that there was absolutely no sign of any anti-stay-at-home protesters that had been scheduled to start at 9 a.m. At Church Circle in Annapolis, Maryland, roughly a block from the Maryland State House. An hour later, Bell reported that a total of 3 people had shown up to Church Circle to demand the immediate reopening of America's economy. Oops. Now there's reports of a few more people showing up, but generally, these protests are actually pretty small. I mean, you have collections of, few hundred people in states across the country, about 5 states total, that are ignoring social distancing measures and putting people in danger. Now, the thing about this that's frustrating is that while these protests are very small, you do see them getting the Tea Party treatment. Now, what do I mean by that? It means headlines that basically make this more important, these protests more important and seemingly bigger than they actually are. For example, you've got corporate media that's now writing headlines, "Conservatives Fuel Protests Against Coronavirus Lockdowns." Well, in reality, it's actually a small group of fringe conservatives, as even most Republicans are complying with social distancing measures. There was another print headline, actually, that claimed the event was an indication that protests were sweeping the nation. They were sweeping the nation. Again, we've had in total of about 5 states. There were like 100 people in that most recent one. And now you also had a dozen protesters in Louisiana. You also had a couple thousand that did participate in a drive-by protest in Michigan, although most people stayed in their cars. And so you stay in your car, the window's up. Okay, well, that's fine. You're not really putting anybody in danger if you're staying in your car, which means practicing proper social distancing, right? Now, there was a couple of hundred people, about 200, that did leave their cars, that weren't in their cars. They were not wearing masks, most of them, and were not practicing social distancing, right? And so there is that distinction between the people that are practicing proper, for the most part, proper protest in the era of COVID-19, which I believe is fine. Everybody has a right to protest, even if they're wrong about what they're protesting against, which is the social distancing measures. But understandably, a lot of those people are probably afraid. And they've been told over and over again that the government's not going to come to help you. So you better get your bootstraps out and go back to work for your corporate overlords. Okay, fair enough, right? Look, they're just trying to feed their kids. And so I don't really have animosity towards those people. But the people who are mainly business leaders, corporate leaders, that are calling for, America to open up, well, a lot of them are at risk personally. It's their employees that'll be more at risk. And not only that, but their customers as well. So I have a problem with that, right? And that seems to be who is making up most of the protesters that are not, that are ignoring these social distancing rules. And so the problem is with the media, corporate media is propping these people up as if there's some sort of gigantic movement, right? And as representative of not only a conservative, but also in some cases a bipartisan movement that we should all have gigantic respect for. Well, reality shows otherwise, that they are neither a large portion of the American people or bipartisan in any sense of the word. They're mostly angry Trump supporters. In fact, ABC said the protests were moving coast to coast, but then said that there was a total of 5 states that held rallies over the weekend. That's 5 out of 50 states. On cable news, the word protesters has been mentioned more than 150 times since Friday, according to TV Eyes. So, but these protests, again, are super small. They're made up of incredibly fringe people. For example, there was an Austin protest earlier this morning. Guess who the main attraction was? Alex Jones. Alex Jones is out there calling this pandemic a hoax. A week from now, Alex Jones will probably be in the hospital. I'm just saying. Usually, if you're out there calling something a hoax, and we can point at a couple different examples of this. For example, UK PM Boris Johnson. He's like, oh, coronavirus, not really a problem here. I'm going to go and shake people's hands. In fact, I am proud of shaking people's hands. Oh, then he goes to the hospital because he got coronavirus. Now, he recovered, and hopefully he actually learned something from this. But again, he's a conservative, so probably not. Or then again, to be fair, conservatives usually learn something when they're personally affected. So now that Boris Johnson had been personally affected, maybe he's like, this turns out this thing's actually kind of a big deal. Oops. I had no idea, even though medical professionals and people on the left were telling us that it's a big deal and we should be worried about it. Yeah. And so not only that, but there's some tragic ones too, where there are certain pastors who are out there saying, I'm covered in the blood of Jesus. I'm going to be protected from the coronavirus. It ain't going to touch me. That have then died from coronavirus. And so Look, I don't mean to make fun of the guy. I really, really don't, because he had family and friends. But that's the attitude that gets people killed. That gets people infected. And so that is a huge, huge problem. And a lot of that, of course, is how the media treats this. Now, the president also deserves a fair bit of blame for this, because he's out there saying we should have big get-togethers for Easter. Not really a big deal. He was out there saying that for quite some time. Now, I mean, he still really wants to open up the country, but so far, look, he's going on Twitter and saying two different things, right? So his administration released some very sensible guidelines on when states can open up, and it literally is left at the state's discretion, right? And when to do so once they've hit certain criteria. But then on Twitter, he's like, liberate Michigan, liberate Pennsylvania. And so, he's egging this on, and he's getting people to get out of their house and to put themselves and other people in absolute danger, right? And so that's a problem, right? But anyway, as far as the media is concerned, okay, well, first, the American people, 81% of Americans support stay-at-home measures, right? 60% believe coronavirus is a major threat to the country. And yet the media wants to prop up right-wing movements and ignore left-wing ones. So thankfully, the trust in the media right now is incredibly low, and yet more people are listening to people like Dr. Fauci, who are saying you should stay home and practice the social distancing in order to not spread the virus. And so, yay, credit for, the American people, right? Now, as far as the media is concerned, again, there is a history of media propping up the right wing and fawning over them in media coverage. Take Occupy Wall Street, right? So Occupy Wall Street is a left-wing movement, right? And the anti-war rallies that happen all around the world in the lead up to the Iraq War. Did the media cover them? No, barely covered. Now, look at the scale, right? 10 to 15 million people had marched in 600 cities back in 2003 in the lead up to the Iraq War. 10 to 15 million people. Did the media cover that? Not really. Did it get a lot of attention? No. At least 500,000 people protested in American cities, including New York, LA, and Seattle. No coverage, barely any coverage. Now you get the Tea Party movement, right? The American media looks at that and goes, that's a real movement. Yes, cover it. Send as many reporters as you can. There's literally a dude wearing a tricorn hat. We need to send 14 reporters to cover it now. Now. We must devote all coverage to them. Oh, we've got gigantic anti-war movements? Pfft, don't care. Don't care. Come at me when there's real news. Don't believe me? Here's an example. In 2010, when the Republicans used Tea Party rallies as part of the midterm election cycle, the three television networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC, devoted 666, I'm not lying, 666 minutes of nightly news coverage to the Tea Party movement. Now, in 2018, the Democrats, right? So the Democrats ran this campaign against Donald Trump, and it actually was legislatively effective in making sure, the House, the Democrats gained a majority in the House. And so that was incredibly effective. How much media coverage did that get? Just 247 minutes. That was an effective Democratic resistance-led movement, right? And so, look, I've had my criticism of the resistance, how it didn't really resist a whole lot. But in this case, this was a people-led movement in order to replace Republicans to get control of the House of Representatives. And that was incredibly effective. You had a lot of progressives that ended up winning their races and getting into the House as well. And in other places, other big wins. And so that was a Democratic blue wave. Barely got any coverage compared to what? The Tea Party protests. Now, look, the Tea Party protests were also actually pretty successful in getting Tea Party Republicans elected to office. And let's be fair. Fair is fair, right? But they had a massive, massive media advantage compared to the Democrats. So understand the playing field is not exactly equal, right? And it's not like we're talking about Fox News only. No, this is ABC, NBC, and CBS. This is supposedly the liberal media talking about Tea Party protests. No, the media has a major hard-on for right-wing movements that are incredibly small and not representative. Remember, the Tea Party movement was incredibly astroturfed, right? It started out as a rant on CNBC by Rick Santelli, right? And he was mad at Obama. Oh, the economy under Obama is going to look like Cuba. Did that happen? Absolutely not. No. But here's the thing. The media respects money. They will only respect people with money. These super small protests, just like what happened during the Tea Party protests, are being promoted by very, very rich people. Mother Jones points out that the coverage, in their coverage of the Michigan protests, that the whole charade was facilitated by the Michigan Conservative Coalition, a conservative political group that doubles as a front for the Michigan Trump Republicans and promoted by the Michigan Freedom Fund, a conservative group with ties to Betsy DeVos. She put in a lot of money into that Michigan Conservative Coalition, and of course, they were able to astroturf and get these protesters out. The media only responds to the will of wealthy right-wingers. Only their concerns justify media attention. You can have a massive left-wing movement, but it's not going to get any coverage because the media is, look, the media is pro-establishment, pro-business, pro-corporate because it is a corporation. And things like the Tea Party, which, call for less taxes on corporations, well, the media eats it up because they're a corporation too, and they love paying less taxes. It's all about money, man. It's all about money. And this, of course, sends the message that only the right wing are the ones that actually matter, when in reality, the right wing is a fringe minority. But the only problem with this time is that it's not just about money. Is that doing an overfocus and saying, oh my God, can you believe these protests? They're sweeping coast to coast. Turns out the American people want to reopen the government. No, it or the economy. It means, it really kind of hurts the rest of us. Because when you put out that message, when you put out that narrative, people, are willing to flout this social distancing. And then that ends up spreading the virus and doing the complete opposite of what we actually need. This whole thing is about greed. This whole thing is about money, corporate donations, to the politicians, and of course, advertising profits and revenue. It's ridiculous. All right. I'm not going to take a break. We got more to do. As the United States continues to bail out big corporations while regular people suffer from the coronavirus outbreak, two countries have decided to limit their bailouts to companies that have not incorporated offshore. Now, the two countries are Denmark and Poland. Now, this is according to an article in Business Insider. The Danish government extended their bailout program into July on Saturday, according to the finance ministry, but stressed that firms based in tax havens would no longer be covered. Quote, companies seeking compensation after the extension of these schemes must pay the tax to which they are liable under international agreements and national rules. Companies based on tax havens in accordance with EU guidelines cannot receive compensation insofar as it is possible to cut them off under EU law and other international obligations. Now, Poland also did something earlier on April 8th. Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki said that large companies wanting a chunk of the $6 billion bailout fund must pay domestic business taxes, and said, quote, let's end tax havens, which are the bane of modern economies. So that's interesting, right? Now, I did a report on Poland going full fascist, right? The leader of Poland. Part of that fascism is economic populism. That's how it actually rises. When right-wing leaders co-opt economic populism, such as these kinds of things, then that's a vehicle that they can use to get into power. Now, Denmark is the opposite of that. Denmark is a social democracy, and so they've also enacted this because it's better for their economy. I mean, how can you have corporations that get bailed out if they're not paying taxes? It's a ridiculous notion. But remember, we had that here in America. We had corporations, we had the cruise industry that was asking America, hey, can you bail us out? You're literally flying flags of other countries. No, we will not bail you out. We will not bail you out at all. So now the article goes on to explain that while these two countries have adopted this measure, and it's smart, other countries that are more neoliberal are refusing to do so or haven't done so yet. So you have the UK, the Netherlands, Switzerland, and Luxembourg that are undecided about whether or not to adopt this measure, which is insane. Look, even Netherlands, man. The Netherlands is more progressive than America, and even they're like, I don't know. Should we bail out corporations that have incorporated in tax havens? The answer is hell no. Hell no. Of course not. We should not. We should not. So now, of course, look, here in America, we've been having this discussion as well. As I mentioned before, in America, we just passed a $2 trillion up to $4.5 trillion bailout fund for giant corporations, right? So we bail out corporations all the time. That's like America 101. And nonetheless, we still have said to the cruise industry, no, we're not going to bail you out because it's so incredibly obvious. But at the same time, remember that part of this $2 trillion is, again, I mentioned it's $2 trillion to $4 trillion because it can be leveraged. That fund, it's supposed to be $500 billion for corporations, but it can be leveraged up to 10 times. And so you can leverage that money for quite a bit of a return. And if you don't fire any employees, those loans turn into grants. So that's basically free money to these giant corporations. But we don't know who's going to get it. And we're not going to know for quite some time, according to the way that bill was structured. It was a terrible piece of legislation. But that package still stipulated that companies must be created or organized in the U.S. And the reason the cruise industry did not get that, of course, is because they were not. So they don't get a bailout. But also in America, corporate taxes are so low for some of the biggest corporations that they barely pay any taxes at all. So I guess going into a tax haven doesn't really make all that much sense in the best of times, but America still does it. But overall, I actually think this is sound policy from two different types of countries. Again, you've got Poland that has gone massively right-wing, especially in recent months. But you also have Denmark, which is, fairly progressive, especially compared to America, is much more progressive. And yet that is still a sound policy from both sides because, again, you should not be bailing out corporations that don't pay any taxes, that have literally created or organized themselves in such a way that they don't have to pay taxes to the company or to the country that they're actually, based in, where they have physical stores and physical things. The only thing that's different is that their headquarters is literally a mailbox somewhere in, one of these tax havens, the Virgin Islands or something. in the Caribbean. So, but yeah. Okay. Anyway, let's move on. One more.
Needs to have moving forward. I just think it's important for us to say that incrementalism is not helpful in this moment. It's not helpful for people to say, oh, well, we got something, so we might as well support it. We got a nickel, we got a dime in $1 trillion bill, so a nickel is more than nothing, so we should support it, is unacceptable.
That was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez going on a bit of a fiery rant about Congress's inaction at helping regular people survive coronavirus. So right now, Congress is debating a $500 billion follow-up to the CARES Act. So now, the framework of that deal, which has been discussed over the last couple of weeks, includes a $350 billion for small business relief. So famously, the first small business relief program, the Paycheck Protection Program, has literally run out of money. So they're out of money, and there are actually a lot of big companies that have taken money from that fund that they didn't necessarily need, starving a lot of small businesses. So now this bill would add $350 billion to it. Now it would also add $75 billion for hospitals and $25 billion to scale up testing ahead of some states taking steps to reopen their economies, which I think can only be done with aggressive testing. So you need aggressive testing, and you need a demonstrable drop in new COVID-19 cases if you're going to even think about opening up the economy. That said, we're not there yet. Roughly about 3 million people in America have gotten tested so far. So we're not there. We're absolutely not there. So now that's some of the provisions. Now, Democrats have also asked for billions more in funding for state and local governments and a 15% increase in the maximum food stamp benefit. Now, this does not involve any additional stimulus payments, just that, we still have that $1,200 payment. And it doesn't involve any moratoriums on rents and mortgages. In fact, that wasn't even brought up. So that's what Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats are negotiating with the White House. Now, Trump and congressional Republicans are unlikely to approve of even any of the measures brought by Democrats. So right now, they're just talking about small business relief for extra funding for hospitals, and more testing. No more help for the American people. So that, of course, has AOC saying that if we're not going to help the American people, then why should I even support the bill? In fact, here's the rest of her statement where she explains why.
It's like putting a Band-Aid on an enormous wound. It's not going to help us. And the thing is that I would be amenable to accepting this kind of logic if Congress actually was in session and convening. But if you're going to say, and if we're going to say that this new bill is going to give us $5 and then Congress is going to peace out for another month-long recess, I'm here to say that that's not going to help our communities. And we have to make sure that we demand meaningful change and meaningful assistance for working families.
So now she talks about what would be meaningful change and meaningful assistance. And it's the idea that her and other members of the squad have come up with, giving a $2,000 UBI for at least until this crisis is over and perhaps a year after that. Not only that, $2,000 a month, but a moratorium on rents and mortgages, as well as an extra $1,000 per child. And that's, again, per month. Because the problem with that one-time $1,200 payment is that it's not going to be enough. That's literally a month of rent. And if you go to places like New York and LA and Seattle, where rent prices are incredibly high, it doesn't even cover the entirety of rent. And so what's going to happen the next month and the next and the next? What's going to happen to these people, right? Who don't have adequate support from the government while the government continues to talk about more relief for corporations. I mean, here's the thing, right? So now mortgage companies have been talking about forbearance, right? So now if you don't pay your mortgage for several months, oh, don't worry, forbearance, right? At the end of that, you still have to pay the months that you missed. So that's not really a solution. Even if you're lucky enough to get back to work in a few months, right? Which experts are saying, actually, we might have to start or continue this social distancing until 2022. Unless we, get some sort of magical miracle treatment or vaccine or anything like that, we've got a long time to go before we can get back to any semblance of normal. Because, getting back to normal is basically impossible at this point. Well, if you're lucky enough to get back to work, you're not going to have that extra money lying around. So we're going to have an even bigger crisis when we're done because we don't adequately take care of our people while we're in the midst of this crisis. So you're going to go from one crisis to an even bigger crisis later. This is why we need a UBI. This is why we need a mortgage and rent freeze. Because if we don't, things are going to get incredibly bad. And she is right, 100%. We are far beyond incrementalism. It is a Band-Aid on a gushing wound. And look, incrementalism didn't work before, but because we were able to easily paper over the problems, like, oh no, there's a giant hole in the system, but we just put wallpaper over it. So it's fine, there's no hole. Hole, what are you talking about, right? But now that paper is gone, right? Coronavirus has exposed the system for what it is. Incredibly weak for workers and favored for the, and generally geared to favor the ultra wealthy. And you can no longer ignore the gigantic inequities of the system. More incrementalism is not going to solve the problem. And especially when it comes to, and this is more the point that she made, if you're going to come up with incremental solutions, why we can't go and discuss this in Congress because of social distancing, then what's the point of passing them? No, we should come up with a comprehensive package that includes help for regular people. That's the only reason. And if we're not going to do that, then what's the point? What's the point? If we're not going to solve the problems and we're not going to do something comprehensive, then I'm not gonna participate. And that's her message. And so she is so far taking a stand against this bill because it's not comprehensive and because it doesn't do anything to help the American people. And I hope her and other progressives continue to block this until we get some provisions in there to help the people. And I certainly hope that it's a UBI. But I think in order to do that, we've got to get Republicans on board. I think the only thing that they can react to right now is massive public shaming. It's worked before. It'll work now. So let's get at it. All right. That's it. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for going around the nation with me today. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Consider subscribing to the channel and clicking the bell a couple of times. And then also, please consider becoming a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. I want to thank some patrons here. Let's see. Oh, we're at 373 patrons. Thank you. I want to thank, the Siroth for signing up. So thank you, the Siroth. And thank you to all those who have already signed up to help fund and, support independent progressive media. It means a lot. All right, guys. Thank you. Love you guys. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Please clap.
Mike Pounds.
Why, oh, you're getting nervous, man.
Oh, man, I'm sorry. You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.